My job for the next few minutes is, first of all, to encourage anybody who's out there to think about applying to medical school and to really give you some words of wisdom about how that might be best accomplished. What I start always by saying in this current climate is that there's never been a better time, that there is, if you like, a lot of factors that are coming together to help, if you like, anybody who's thinking of doing medicine right now to be successful. So the first question really is, what is medicine? And it really is just the application of science to patient care. It's about diagnosing disease. It's about preventing disease, if you like, by prescribing treatments, relieving disease, or even curing disease by using various medications or other treatments to do that. But also there are important decisions to be taken, whether these be ethical or political, and all these roll together into what a medic does. Doctors have a whole variety of different jobs. We often see them in the context of primary care as GPs, or indeed in hospitals, when we're then referred on to other doctors for other types of treatment perhaps. But also there are community doctors that work in the community. We have people, colleagues of mine in the medical school who are academic medicine. They do academic medicine, so they do research and as well as their clinical practice. Some will go into private practice, some will go overseas, some will join the pharmaceutical industry. And I saw on some of the chat earlier that people were asking about getting in and getting sponsorship from the armed forces. And they do in fact take doctors, trained doctors, into the armed forces, and they help fund those applicants through their medical degrees. More altruistic, perhaps, doctors may go and work for aid organisations, for NGOs, non-governmental organisations throughout the world, and indeed some may specialise in legal medicine. And I think it's fair to say that there are many, many more opportunities within medicine. So the goal is not just one single goal, but a whole range of potential roles in the future. The rewards are very important to consider if you're thinking of applying to medicine. And I suppose at the end of the day, it's a long path to travel. So you really want to be sure you understand what the rewards are. It is an interesting, worthwhile, and varied work. It has job security, and you're at the front end often of medical and scientific developments. Increasingly, there are opportunities to change career path. You are forever, if you like, developing your professional skills. And I think perhaps at the remunerative end, i.e. how much you get paid, a basic pay for a foundation doctor in year 2 is 32,000, but that can be amplified significantly by doing various on-call shifts and different rotas. I said at the beginning that there's never been a better time to think about this, and this is principally the reason that a couple of years ago, Michael Jeremy Hunt decided that there needed to be more medical students being trained in the UK, and he oversaw the increase from 6,000 then to about 7,500. And these medical schools are just coming on stream. And that's combined with the fact that right now there is a continuing drop, and it's not just about to start plateauing out, but of 18 to 21-year-olds. So the consequence of that is there are, in fact, fewer people to be competing for the increased number of places that are available in the medical schools. So that should encourage you. As part of that, there has been an increase in the number of medical schools throughout the UK, and some of these are quite new. Some of them are just taking their first cohorts this year. Some just took their first cohorts last year. So obviously there are others that are much more established, and you've got quite a choice. So you can cast your net quite widely to look at the wide range of medical schools there are available to you. As I said a few minutes ago, it's a long journey. I mean, you're starting now thinking about applying. You then are confronted with 5 to 6 years, depending on what course you do, of the medical degree itself. Then you're obliged to do 2 years, the foundation years. And then after that, you have the choice of deciding whether you want to follow a particular specialty, including GP training, and that can take a further 3 to 8 years. And because of the nature of the role that you play in society, it is important for the regulators, and that's the General Medical Council, to make sure that you continue to keep your skills set up and that you develop professionally. So it's a lifelong journey. One of the things I frequently find myself saying to any group of potential applicants is, please look at this website. It is produced, it's the medical school's website, council website, and it has brilliant resources on it. The reason they're brilliant is very straightforward. One is that they're accurate, and as people like me, as an admissions director in a medical school, I complete the forms and send them in. More importantly, they're free to everyone, so it levels the playing field. And perhaps also importantly, the information is endorsed by the UK medical schools. And I picked out one example. There was produced some years ago some brochures called Journey to Medicine, and there are 5 of these. One of them is not particularly relevant, but you can see that each of these brochures has a title that is about guiding you through the application process. And I would encourage you to go and look at this website and use the material that's there. The medical schools are looking for 2 things, and it's often debated by admissions people when they get together, is which is the important one? Is it their brain power, or is it the other things, their communication skills and their team working skills and things like that? And the argument is you need both. What the argument is do we need the top brains to be the doctors? And that's still a debate that's being continued. But it's important to remember that there are 2 aspects. One is the so-called cognitive abilities, that's your academic skills, and the non-cognitive. And that really is about your abilities and your personality in a more general way. So that's what we're looking for. So the routes that you can use when you're applying to medicine are generally very straightforward. You often have to have a very minimum baseline requirement of GCSEs for most medical schools, and they're pretty explicit about what ones they need and what level, and you can find all this information on the Medical Schools Council website in a document called the Entry Requirements for Medicine for 2021. And often they will then add perhaps to that an additional admissions test like the UCAT or BMAT. However, I'm often asked by students, well, I didn't really do that well in my UCAT, or I didn't do that well in my GCSEs. What happens if I do well in my A-levels? Can I apply then? And the answer is yes. If you've got good A-levels, then please apply with your A-levels. There's nothing to stop you to be reconsidered if at the first hurdle you didn't match up in terms of the academic skills that are required. And again, some people may not quite have achieved the A-level grades that medical schools are looking for. And what they then do is go and do another degree program and then look after 3 years, usually, for a graduate entry program, which are often 4-year programs, and they are specifically designed to enable graduates to be considered for medicine. What I will say is check the requirements for each route carefully on the web or in the medical school's prospectuses to make sure that you know exactly what it is you're going to apply for. When medical schools are looking at applicants, we look at their skills in terms of academic ability, but the things we're looking for in addition to that are these sort of things. Are they people focused? Is there any evidence that they have been involved in looking after people in any context? And do they know what it's like to be involved in healthcare? Do they have caring responsibilities within their family, or indeed do they look after elderly neighbours? Do they do babysitting? These all add up to the idea that you are a responsible person that can be left to look after others. Do they have work experience? And that can be in a whole variety of contexts, but mostly to do with meeting members of the public and dealing with them and understanding how challenging sometimes that can be. You can, medical schools will look at your school or college responsibilities, and these are wide-ranging. You could be involved in clubs and societies, you could be captain of sports teams within your school or college. You could be on the school council, and all these kind of things add up to the kind of person that medical schools are looking for. Often you're encouraged, and you'll find people talking about so-called reflective logs or reflective practice. And I know from experience that a lot of people go, whoa, don't really fancy that. But really it comes down to three things. One is what happened? So what did you think? What did you feel about the circumstances? And then now what? I.e., how did you deal with that situation? How much better could you have made it? Or, hey, I did that really well, and why did I manage to make that such a good experience? And it's really being able to express what you have learned about yourself that is important when you're trying to convince medical schools that you're their kind of person. I would say that most of this is encouraged, that you report most of this, if you like, in the personal statement. Although I have to say that increasingly I'm concerned about personal statements. First of all, I would encourage you to look and find out how the personal statements of the medical schools that you're thinking of applying to use them, and think about really whether or not you need to do 37 different iterations and ask every living person that you've ever met that has a healthcare responsibility to read it for you. Often they're quite formulaic. They are asking for very specific things. All you've got to do is indicate that you have some experience in that context. It's very clear these days that in these altered times that students will struggle to find work experience. And I was delighted when I was listening in on one of the workshops earlier, somebody making reference to the workshop work experience advice that was being given to the medical school by the Medical Schools Council in this document. You can find it on their website. And there's a lot of resources available through this document that don't necessarily require that you have to go off and work in a doctor's surgery or indeed in a hospital, because these environments at the moment are quite protected, and it wouldn't be appropriate perhaps to be looking to get experience there. So please go and have a look at this so that you've got some idea of how else you might try and circumvent or get round the problem of getting work experience. The application cycle is pretty straightforward. It starts always without fail pretty much on the 15th of October when you have to put in your application to UCAS. You list 4 medical schools plus a 5th choice, which is a non-medical choice. The medical schools then look at your applications and decide whether or not you've met their academic and non-academic criteria. And on that basis, they will decide whether you should be interviewed. You will then have to prepare yourself for that interview, and increasingly the multiple mini-interview format is used. And people often ask me, what's the best practice for that? Well, it's looking in the mirror and giving an answer to a question that you might have addressed yourself, and keep it within the prescribed time that you're allowed when you come to do an MMI. The interviews are held often in a very tight time window. Ours in Cardiff are run between December and January, and then we try as quickly as we can to make offers to the applicants that we have scored. In our case, we only base our offer for a place in the course on the interview performance, all else being equal in terms of the requirements. We do provide interview performance feedback, and if you haven't been successful, and this is not always the case in every medical, but certainly in Cardiff, if you weren't successful at the interview, but you then go on and get the required A-level grades, then we would always encourage you to reapply. So that's the cycle, and that's the kind of steps in the process. The interviews themselves, thank you. The interviews themselves are the opportunity for the medical schools to judge your non-cognitive skills, and these really are important in that they give you the chance to talk about yourself in a reflective way, be confident and positive, make sure you don't rehearse the answers overduly, and answer the question, and as best you're able, stay calm and follow the instructions. As I've already said, the MMIs are the most common performance, the most common format these days, but the major thing to remember is that they don't limit you in the sense that that if you do poorly in one station, doesn't mean you're going to fail overall. These are the sorts of areas, and I won't rehearse them because I'm sure there's been others talking about these today, but they can be quite varied, the interview stations. And finally, if it all goes to plan, and I'm sorry this is very Cardiff-centric, but this could be you in 5 or 6 or 7 years' time. And I wish you every success if you apply to medicine. Thank you for your attention.